Okay, there we go. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the BTS Pro Series 10 Americas. We're moving into the third game here of our best of 5 grand final. Game 3 between Thunder Awaken and 4 Zoomers. These two squads able to trade out the first 2 matches, so the best of 5 effectively sort of getting cut down to a best of 3 here, as we are going to push into that Game 3 draft. I'm joined as always by ET, and ET... Oh, okay. 4 Zoomers are just going to start us off with the Gyro IO combo right off the back.
Yeah, and okay. We'll do this real quick. We'll take a step away as the first phase ends there with the bans, but I don't know about you guys, but let's talk about the DPC qualifiers a little bit, because there's a little bit of confusion right now, a little bit of hands in the air, what's going on with the bracket. So it turns out that 2 of the teams were caught account sharing, and I hazard to say caught because they weren't exactly caught, they were allowed to account share, but in the way that ESL had just revised their rules, and it does make it sound like they had just revised these rules, they've decided that these teams are now disqualified. In doing so, reinstating other teams. The issue, however, is that they haven't restated everyone. They have unfortunately moved around the bracket a little bit. They've made it so that way certain teams who had played versus still instated teams are now disqualified. They've moved around the rounds of the lower bracket. They've really made a little bit of a mess of everything. And I think it's a little bit unfair for, unfortunately, some of the boys in that lower bracket, which also means that Strata Gaming moves forward and is qualified on their own terms. But really, this is crazy. This is a little bit unknown. There's really not a precedent for this either. This is completely different. This is a huge mishandling, I think, of the system. And the craziest thing, and most unfair to Team Magnus, I think a team that had dropped from the regional qualifiers because of the roster lock, is they weren't banned for being Smurfs. They were banned for using the Smurfs to circumvent the regional lock system, which is a whole can of worms that I don't even know how to unpack, because they already played 3 days worth of games. So there you go. NADPC for you. But you'll be able to catch those games on ESL Dota right now. Don't give them any hate. The casters, they are not the ones at the fault here. It's something higher up that, I mean, maybe as a region we could look at together, but it's not Avo, it's not Seek and Strike, it's not them. It's something that as a whole, I really don't think they even want to hear about it, because they probably know how this looks. But I think now, let's get back to the draft. Just wanted to catch everybody up on what could be a very confusing situation for a lot of people.
Right. People watching this series, when it concludes, might look over and wonder what the heck happened over in those regional qualifiers. So, yeah. And again, yeah, as ET said, you know, the casters are just sort of doing, at this point, kind of what's being handed down to them. So, you know, if you are heading over there, please don't give them any crap, especially Avo and Seek and Strike. They work their asses off, really in every region, but this one in particular. So just want to get you up to speed on that. I know it's not entirely relevant to what we have going on right now, but well, thought it would be best to give you that update in case you haven't heard already. So with that in mind, as you said, ET, let's shift the focus back over. 4 Zoomers, Gyrocopter and IO, going in a very different direction from what we have seen, not just in this series, but in really the event as a whole, whereas Thunder Awaken getting something that feels very familiar in the Ember Spirit along with the Mars opening.
Yeah, and I think Gyro IO, very interesting second pick, and it feels like this is the type of hero combo, I want to say, that only comes out in a best of 5 situation where I don't want to say it's a throwaway strat, but you give away very little. This is almost a setup, you could say, for 4 Zoomers, where we pick IO Gyro when we have second pick here, and then coming into game 3, depending on how we succeed with our combo, the bans look different. And I think that's where Thunder Awaken, they are in a tight spot a little bit when it comes to their bans. Whenever 4 Zoomers have second pick and they don't have to worry about the Tiny, well, they're always going to ban out the LD and the Chen, but it's where that next opportunity where 4 Zoomers have priority, this could be their way to maybe, if they win this game with this strategy, the next game they could look to really beat Thunder Awaken here and then take the advantage and draft in that game. But I think that's why we see it here specifically in game 3, because this is kind of a tried and true strategy in that long format. You hide really everything, you show very little. I think that's where Thunder Awaken now, they're the exact opposite. They're going to bring their A game here. This is their game, you could say, 2 win, surprisingly enough. They take priority in game 3, and they also take first pick. So we're seeing a little bit of a shift in what teams are actually choosing. And I think a large in part, it's just because of the Tiny. The Tiny's just that good. The Tiny's that broken. And that's also where they got Abaddon. That's a little bit concerning if you're 4-Zoomers.
And now they get the Death Prophet as well in a scenario where 4-Zoomers have already taken their 2 supports, presumably, in the Io and the Shadow Shaman. So there isn't really room for that Shadow Demon that we saw being one of the deterrents or sort of hindrances to the Death Prophet. So Thunder Awaken looking pretty good. And as you said before, if you're 4-Zoomers, this is game 3. This is the pivot game. We've got all the statistics in the world from Dota and really just from competitive sports in general about, you know, your percentage to win the series if you take game 3 generally is pretty high. And on the one hand, you could say, you know, trying a paradigm shift here maybe with the bans if you win with this strategy is, on the one hand, overly ambitious, because that's assuming that you win with this strategy anyway. But I can see it, especially in this matchup, if you're going against Thunder Awaken, you kind of need to force that shift, because if you just try to play straight up against Thunder Awaken for 5 straight games, it is unbelievably difficult to get one over on them.
Yeah, and it's also where 4-Zoomers, they're put under as much pressure as Thunder Awaken are. When it comes to a loss, it's where you really look deep into the hero pools. You look what these teams are going to really bring to focus, and it's also where the holes start to show, and especially for 4-Zoomers, I mean, this is their 5th game of the day. This is where maybe you start to feel a little bit tired. They've got, again, a long day ahead of them. There are at least 2 more games in this series if they win this game out. And that's where you need to be even more precise in your draft. It's where you start to sweat a little bit, especially if you're in the captain's seat for both Matthew and Moo. It's where you really need to keep yourself sharp as the series goes on, because all it takes is 1 or 2 missed bans or missed picks, and then suddenly you're in a very difficult, almost unwinnable position. And I think that's where both captains still doing a very good job of it, but it's where that fatigue certainly starts to set in.
Yeah, and I mean, if you want just an absolute immediate example, we had one just this morning into the afternoon with the Gamers Galaxy. That one went a full 5 games. You had sort of the testing of the limits for teams vis-a-vis both endurance and focus. And well, 4-Zoomers are the squad that sort of comes into this having played, as you said, the full best of 3 beforehand. So, well, so far we haven't really seen any signs of fatigue from them. Hopefully that does not become a factor. You never really want a game or a series to end that way, but they might have their work cut out for them here. This Gyro and Io sort of combination looking like it is going to bear more and more of the weight for them right now. We are still, at this stage, I think looking for a gunner here. I was kind of assuming if they're going to run that Gyro that they do so as a carry for Costabile, but you take a look at the bans, Thunder Awaken don't seem to agree. They take the Luna out at the start of Phase 3.
Yeah, and there is that shred of history, right? 4-Zoomers did run that gyrocopter in the mid lane previously, but I think that's also where, at least when it came to a lot of the events, especially played in the past day, not even 24 hours, that gyrocopter has been coming into the carry role. I think it was Skeeter that played it in the Tundra series. I don't know if we saw it at all in the Boom series, but it's to that same effect where it does feel better as a carry. If it's in the mid lane, there are other concerns that you need to run, namely that you don't really have another playmaker. And I think that's where I kind of have to agree with you. I think in the ban, TA maybe covers a few more bases, but with the Luna at the very least, you're giving Gunner maybe a free time, and I think one that he absolutely is going to look for. They're probably going to look for the mid lane here. At least I would if I'm 4-Zoomers. And that's where maybe Thunder Awaken miss just a tad on the bans, but we'll have to see, because sometimes, as we do get later on here, there could be throwaway bans. Thunder Awaken, especially in their first 2 drafts, even though they definitely lost game 2, they've been keeping this pool, and especially for the core, is very wide open. There are a lot of support bans. They're almost forcing, I want to say, 4-Zoomers in a lot of positions where we don't ban the hero you expect us to ban. So now there are 2 heroes for you to pick, and you can only pick one. It's one of the advantages that you can also try to run when you have first pick. And they go Morphling.
Okay.
That is a really great pick into the Io Gyro.
It's a Pakaz Morphling as well, one of his best. So this looks pretty damn good for the Thunder Awaken side. 4-Zoomers, meanwhile, well, what is the response? Where will the gyrocopter go? At this point, I mean, it really does feel like you can throw it into Costabile's hands and Gunner's pool is going to be wide open, but It is their decision to make, and they've got a whole heck of a lot of time to make that choice, ET. They have over a minute left on the reserve time. They had sort of been flying through the draft to this stage, so... Well, what do they want to look for here? If the gyro is the one, they've got some nice damage, they've got some nice lockdown, so you could afford to put Gunner maybe in a more offensive position. You've got all the spirits in the pool, you've got things like the Queen of Pain, and I think actually, yeah, the Invoker still wasn't even banned there either. So really, other than maybe the Kunkka, and I guess we'll put the TA in there, everything is still available, and they will go for the Necro. Served them well the last time around. And...
I mean, 3 healers, 4 zoomers. They hit the 3-way, but yeah, it is going to be a Kosubi like gyrocopter. I think it was pretty obvious that Gunner was going to take this hero yet again, but is that now going to be, I think, a Dark Mago Mars?
Whoa, hold up.
And actually, wait, they really switched things up.
The Gunner mid LC, dude, I have not seen that in quite some time. In pro matches, at least. I think Gunner might still mess around with it occasionally in pubs, but position 2 LC is kind of rare, and that is going to be Legion Commander up against Dark Mago Mars on the other side.
Yeah, and I think they go for this because there are just too many lanes that this Necro can really go in. He can lane anywhere, and he's going to have a very dominant position. If he goes versus the Morphling, well, he's going to be laning Necro versus Morphling, and Bakaz, who has very short attack range, is going to be caught by a lot of those death pulses. If he ends up going mid, well, he's laning versus Dark Mago, and that maybe would have been a draw, but it's where Sacred locked in on this Death Prophet. They're kind of locked in now, and of course, the Death Prophet Ember lane is a very strong lane that Thunder Awaken have pulled out many times in the past, but I do wonder if now Dark Mago is going to be a little bit annoyed that he's going to really eat as much as he is able to give out in that mid lane, and Gunner should absolutely be fine with the Moment of Courage just to keep him there. It feels like they have a very successful draw setup right now. No matter where the 4 Zoomers heroes go, they're going to at least go even in these lanes, and I'm trying to think where the break is and where Thunder Awaken are going to look in. And of course, there's a mid-Mars, right? You're always going to think that it's going to be his level 6, his arena, but with how much healing going on here, I have a little bit of concerns because it feels like a lot of that burst damage is really going to be coming in from Bakaz. But of course, Bakaz is not going to want to show up for a very long time here. It's where I think it's going to be incredibly hard to make Sacred into that very fast damage deal, and we're really going to need to see a lot from him specifically. Meanwhile, 4 Zoomers, if they can survive, they've got that easy reset. They've got the 3 healers. If they're not getting bursted, it's almost impossible to stop them from resetting.
Well, we mentioned for 4 Zoomers, it felt like a large part of their draft was attempting to shift the series meta a little bit, right? Get Thunder Awaken sort of looking at more heroes than they normally would in terms of what they had to plan against, and this is definitely the position that 4 Zoomers envisioned themselves being in at the start of this game. Now they've got to actually execute the game plan and get themselves this win, but it is a shift, and Thunder Awaken may not necessarily be ready for it. Although, to be fair, if you're Thunder Awakened, you still did get a lot of the heroes that you feel insanely comfortable with, but see how much that comfort translates into success for them. It's Matthew. Try to walk away, and 4 Zoomers, they actually weren't entirely in position, and Z-Freak kind of the player who had to take point there, because he's the only one who had any sort of immediate lockdown. He hadn't skilled anything up, though, and it was a few steps too far back.
And, well, it's a little bit awkward to fight in the river here, especially because Dark Mago, like always, like every Mars, wants to get the Gaunt's Rebuke level 1. Really just okay for the chest bump, but I really don't think you want this. They really don't want to be forced to skill up like the Siphon. Of course, Matthew, he got the chains, but it's now going to be pretty annoying to deal with, but I think still probably just going to be the 2-2 split. I'm surprised 4 Zoomers are still tempting fate a little bit here, though, because their level 1 is really not that great, and Gunner, I think he's just right-clicking around. Very awkward beginning to this game.
What exactly are we doing here, boys? There's doesn't seem to be a whole lot of a cohesive plan, just trading out damage at the moment, but well, if you're Husky and Costable, then trading damage is just fine, because you've got the IO with the tether. You are not really taking any of that actual damage, whereas Sacred and Matthew are getting hit up a little bit harder.
And, well, look at that. Costable is just inputting the damage here, especially with the flat cannon, and Matthew is already burnt out. He only has 1 set of Tango left. Honestly, pretty big wins already for Zoomers, but I think that's where we'll have to see how they decide to lane this out, because I think Thunder Awaken, at least the core four, not because they need to have very strong early games, otherwise they really don't have anyone else to save their game.
Well, we'll see how they respond to maybe that sort of added pressure here early on in this one. As Matthew, okay, he's just going to pull a creep wave, try to get some work going here on the equilibrium. Meanwhile, elsewhere on the map, Z-Freak, once again, being that annoying presence on the back line, taking out the courier, and Picasso's got to be so incredibly careful here. Z-Freak was sort of wrapping around. Doesn't have any lockdown here, but honestly, oh god, move. He's going to get jumped in on. Can Picasso actually do this? One or two more hits? No. He's going to shift his attention over to Z-Freak rather than go any further forward, and well, I don't know. Maybe he just felt he was going to be too far out of attack range, because I think he could have kept going and gotten the last attack or two in that he needed. Now Moo gets to heal up with the salve, and well, your Morphling is not in the most comfortable of positions, because Panda, if he's going to pop any sort of defensive spell here, needs to use either the stick charges or the mango.
Yeah, and really, we get the reset, but the Necro is always going to be this. I think he goes for it knowing he has the level advantage and that Moo can't really take the trade, but it happened. Gunnar got a solo kill mid again. Really just kind of working the matchup for everything he has, but that's also just with a creep wave pushing in. He tanks the creep wave, he has 2 points up in Moment of Courage, and then the Dark Mago gets greedy with his regen. He died with 2 bottle charges left.
Gunnar gets the Moment of Courage throughout the overwhelming odds there as well, and as you said, Dark Mago just really trying to run it down, trying to hold off as long as he can, but well, this was something... Oh, okay, hold on. Never mind, that's a nice play, but the tower will not cooperate. If those tower shots are hitting Gunnar, maybe there's kill potential there. Otherwise, your LC is just able to walk out from underneath that tier 1, and it is nice damage, but now Gunnar's got some regen coming. He's got to point up and press the attack. He's going to get pinned to his tower again, but Dark Mago really can't go any further than that now. At least he's able to get some water runes, but he would love the chance at immediate revenge, but it's just not going to be there.
Yeah, we'll have to see, because I don't really know how many supports are going to want to rotate to this lane, and Dark Mago's surely trying to even it out, but that's where he always loses this trade, and this is a really rough lane for him. He really doesn't have a way to keep the LC off of him. He does have the mana again to make the difference, but it's where you do worry, and I do worry for him if he does get solo killed again. We could really see this LC start to snowball, and of course, a Gunnar has to work for a lot of his items. The bottom, they just track down that IO. Isn't much that Costabile can do, and doesn't get the rocket either.
Husky gets taken down. Meanwhile, up top, there was an attempt onto the Abaddon. Not going to be a successful one at the moment, but well, at this point, I'll actually shift the camera back up there, because they're still hanging out pretty far underneath the tower. The shackles are back up, so Thunder Awaken do have to be careful, is because, yeah, that's a pretty substantial amount of damage. Do watch out for it, but at this point, Moo's starting to run out of mana, so looks like he will back away, but Zoomer's trying to be, okay, aggressive as Z-Freak. That's not aggression, that's just a kill literally walking into your hands, but he'll take it. Z-Freak gets the pick, and Panda gets taken down. And now because... No, he already got the shift off, so I don't think they have the damage for this, but put the pressure on. No support here to back him up, so Kaz does not have that bailout if he takes any significant damage. Just really like the way that Zoomers are playing this lane. Between this aggression and the way Gunnar's playing mid, things are working out pretty okay for them. So okay that the loss of Husky down in the bottom lane really doesn't register as too much of a setback.
Yeah, and really, this top lane is a huge win for them right now. And a lot of times when we talk about lineups, we always talk about that balance in the lanes, really sticking a melee with a ranged hero, but they're just contesting Pakaz at every turn, and Panda is really forced to spend all of his mana, all of his HP, keeping Pakaz at those high HP levels. But that's where the Shadow Shaman, who just has 81 base damage, blast hitting alongside Moo, there's just no opening for Pakaz to get a lot of these last hits. It's actually impossible, and it is really starting to slow down this Morphling. He already has fallen very hard behind CS-wise, but that's where Matthew, he does strike, and they do have a very easy target to get onto, especially with those siphons coming out. They do use every single siphon, but it's still a trade that they're going to continue to make. However, Costabile, he's not really getting stopped in the farming department.
Yeah, that's the good news for the Gyrocopter here. Sacred and Matthew do have to commit a lot for that kill, which they will get, but if it's Husky who has to sort of make the sacrifice here every time, then the Gyrocopter's still going to be okay with that one. And I don't really think Sacred and Matthew can do a whole lot to the Gyro himself, or well, they can at least kill off his courier. That's going to be something, but in terms of actually pushing, it's all on to Husky, as Sacred is going to try to get in there, but there's that homing missile stunning Sacred up. Siphon is going to come to an end, but now Husky needs the tether, and he's not going to get all the way out. He's going to get hit up by the chains instead, but again, Sacred doesn't have any siphons, so they can't go any further. Costabile is just going to basically force these heroes back with the relatively slow but still consistent damage from him.
Yeah, and if that chain hits maybe a little bit sooner, you actually break the tether instead of what ended up happening, but it's also just how aggressive Sacred likes to play his Death Prophet. He's just using his Spirit Siphons off cooldown to try and even out the trades, but that's where top just a little bit too far up in the wave, and something that Z-Freak with his stacked large camp has been doing an incredible job of just pulling the morph away from his tower. Doesn't have the armor, doesn't have the HP regen, and when you're on pretty much 70% strength because you keep on having these really rough trades, well, you are going to have less armor, and unfortunately, in the creep wave, just goes down again.
First death for the Morphling, but this off lane is really just playing with a heavy degree of confidence at this point. They are not really afraid to go in for these fights, and in fairness to them, they know. I mean, what can the Morphling really do right now? He's got the waveform, but if he uses that to try and do damage, then he doesn't have it to escape. There's no points up in the adaptive strike, so they know they have that edge, and now Z-Freak's going to rotate up top, or excuse me, down bot, rather. Sacred did pop the Exo, but they're not quite on the same page here, unfortunately. Z-Freak tried to go in, and I believe he's going to end up paying for it. They should be able to take him down, and yeah, Costabile and Husky don't want to get involved there, so they needed to make that rotation just that little bit faster once Sacred pops the ult. They didn't really want to be there anymore.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be crucial for Thunder Awaken's game plan, just making sure Sacred's in the right place at the right time, able to get something out of his exorcism, and of course, one kill doesn't feel like the most, but if he can swing it into the stack, that's something. And 7 minutes into the game, you're not really going to feel that cooldown really being unavailable to you. And as we usually say when a hero is getting off to a good start in this game, well, around that 10-minute mark when the carts are spawned, well, you're going to have your exorcism back. So this is your freebie. This is your free spell usage of a very long cooldown. If he's actually able to farm the stack, even better, but I can only imagine Husky, probably the one to stack that camp, is probably going to be pretty annoyed. That's why Costabile is already trying to push in the creep wave.
They would love to get up there and contest that as much as they possibly can, but don't want to just walk past the creep wave to do so. As I believe Matthew, yeah, he's back in. They're ready to go. We'll wait for the all clear from 4 Zoomers, and then we'll see what Sacred can get from this stacked camp. In the meantime, over in the middle lane, Gunnar actually did push the Mars out for just a little bit. Dark Mago has a TP, though, so he can return to this lane fairly quickly. However, it is also worth noting he has the Arena of Blood, so he doesn't necessarily have to try and go back mid. Might make a rotation of the side lanes, try and make some sort of gank, especially if they can get the timing. No, they can't. Exorcism already down to about a third of its timer, so I was thinking maybe they can get the last few seconds of the Exo, but I don't think that's a play that they can make now.
Nah, definitely not. And they are going to really kind of have to reset here, but that's also where in the mid lane, Gunnar still did everything he needed, and he actually forced Dark Mago back to base. This is a pretty nice movement, though, from him. He's smoked up. He wants to find Costabile coming up to contest, but with Gunnar hitting the mid tower, and he's actually about to take the mid tier 1, they should know that Dark Mago's on the move, and really, I think this tower is just going to go down for free. Thunder Awaken are sticking to this play maybe a little bit too strictly because they are very aware as to what's going on here, and now your mid-tier 1 is just free. It's gone.
Yeah, not the most subtle play in the world. Costabile and Husky just continue to sit under that tower until really they got the clear, and now they are going to get that stack, so this is all kind of falling apart for Thunder Awaken, but they are still looking for it. If Dark Mago can get this, they've got the Searing Chains down into the Spear Stun. Z-Freak, though, look at him coming in, going to throw the Shackles down onto Sacred. Costabile getting healed up now as Gunnar will join the fight. Press the attack comes in. The duel now going to get thrown down into the Reapers. Not enough for the kill initially. They won't get the duel win either, but at this point, they have won this fight hands down. Matthew and Sacred both dead. Panda not having his ult here, so he should fall as well.
Prepare for a lesson.
And at this point, ET, you know they would have just been better off not trying it at all, but they didn't know that until they go in, but every single member of Four Zoomers ends up rotating down there, and that is, well, a back-breaking play for the 9-minute mark, but you're Thunder Awaken now. How exactly do you respond to this? That was supposed to be your moment, and it has passed you by.
Yeah, it's where now the next play for Thunder Awaken is just going to be waiting for Exorcism, really, but it's the opposite play from Four Zoomers, where because Gunnar pushes in the mid wave, you don't know where the LC is. He could be in your small camp, he could be in his own jungle. Instead, he's walking towards the correct fight. I think bringing Mu as well, very smart. And now Gunnar, he's looking for a little bit of a cheeky duel here onto Pagaz in the top lane, maybe catching him on low HP, but that's also where this LC is just raring to go. He has so many levels right now. He does so much damage, and he can afford to just sit in a lane, push another tower. Probably needs some help the next time around, but the game is very awkward now for Thunder Awaken to play. Losing that mid tower so early, they don't have that safe farming route, and if they really wanted to, Four Zoomers could just immediately look for kills for heroes that should still be farming, still playing in that small camp. And now the game is just very strange, especially because they swapped the safe lane already. Costabile is out on the map. Meanwhile, Mu is just going to sit under his tower and really be unkillable. They don't have an easy way to take down this necro in the slightest.
Oz, able to avoid the gank there in the jungle. Started shifting towards strength right as Z-Freak sort of came in onto him, so not going to be taken down there. But now this is a problem. Down bot. Gunner's here, moves in. Costabile is going to TP. They've got the duel onto Matthew. That is about as easy a win as you're going to be able to find. Gunner getting himself some free damage, looking to see if there's a straggler, as Sacred wanted to take the camp, and he's going to get most of it, but Gunner's there to make sure that he doesn't overstay his welcome, and once again, Thunder Awakened, they get pushed back. The LC able to get some dual damage, and Costabile, he didn't really care too much about that. He did TP in, but he contributes a little bit to that fight, but he really cares more about taking another stack, so your gyrocopter is starting to get very built up in a short span of time. Has the crit stick. Do we just see him? He hasn't queued up anything yet, but this could just be crit into the Aghanim Scepter play for him. As he freak, that's
oh no. They gotta kill the
take
tower
that tower, yeah.
Yeah, they gotta help him. They gotta help him out. He's gonna be stuck here for another 35 though. He doesn't have a TP either. Oh, the toy! Yes. Gunner saves him.
There you go. That's a little goofy, but hey, Z-Freak doesn't have to pay for it. They get the tower, everyone gets out safely, and they are eyeballing Sacred here a little bit. I don't really know if they can sneak in on this one, so Sacred may be okay, but they're still here. Maybe looking for a wraparound play. If nothing else, they're at least just trying to take control of this east side jungle, but really no one's coming at this point. Sacred's not going to be that greedy. He's just going to try and get this cart, which gets glyphed, or the cart doesn't get glyphed. The tower up in the top lane will get the glyph, but they will be able to protect that for a little while longer, but they're still not looking for the fight. Excuse me. Mu just wants to get in here and find farm for himself. Gunner, however, might be a bit of a different story. Invis rune is up. Just needs somebody to walk into range, and Panda was pretty damn close, but not going to go all the way up there.
Yep, and, well, it plays, getting a little bit of a net worth swing back in Thunder Awaken's favor. Unfortunately, and the Boo might just die. He needs one more moment first.
Oh,
wow, that is super tight, but hey, it worked out. Sure, Gunner gets a free kill, and actually Matthew, oh, nice dodge, but the toy doesn't get the follow-up.
And yeah, they see the TP coming in. Z-Freak doesn't want to pin himself down, but he will turn around now just because he kind of has to. It's not going to be enough to save him, however. Z-Freak does get picked off. They're not going to be able to get onto Gunner, though, and, well, I think you're okay with that one. You got yourself a dual win for the LC, up to plus 20 now, as Gunner just going to continue making progress towards that BKB. So, not a bad play from the Four Zoomer side. Meanwhile, up in the top lane, Costabile and Husky putting pressure onto the tier 1.
Yeah, and that's where, if you're Four Zoomers, you are still playing an Iogyro lineup. You need to find setups in the side lanes. I think that's where Z-Freak is going to become a more important member for his team. He's probably going to take control of this top area. Once he has that Aether Lens, he really could look for those easy kills with the relocate, but Uh, that's where I am also wondering if perhaps the lineup is a little bit stacked up right now, and especially without a Blink Dagger being built up by Gunner, your initiation is honestly a little bit weak for taking away some of these areas. Pushing onto towers, that is fine, that's great for 4 Zoomers, but fighting in the jungle is a little bit more difficult here, and I think until we see that Blink Dagger, or maybe even a Shadow Blade from Gunner, we'll have to see what his flavor is, but you're not going to see them really able to make full use of this lineup. And Z-Freak is set up to try and go for a push top, but honestly, I think really Thunder Awaken, they're getting what they want here, and they're a little bit too spread out.
Get on to move. Not able to finish him off immediately, but they are still working for it. Meanwhile, Sacred, he gets dueled by Gunner, but Gunner actually takes the full brunt of the Exo. There were no other targets for the Spirits to hit. That's just a little bit too split up. Gunner could have just maybe used the press the attack to get Moo out from the spear stun. Instead, they tried to get a little greedy, and they do end up paying pretty heavily for it. They will lose 2 heroes, they'll lose the tier 1 tower, and their push up top doesn't really net them anything either.
Yeah, I was so ready for them to relocate in bottom. Of course, that would require Z-Freak to TP maybe a little bit sooner for the defense, but a really strange play, to be honest, from 4 Zoomers. It felt like they were going to fight over that tier 1 tooth and nail, but instead they really give it up for free, and they lose 2 cores to boot. Very weird, because this is also a lineup that really allows for very few mistakes. You are still playing versus a Morphling, and sure, it is just a Morphling. He's the only carry on Thunder Awaken's side. He can still become your Gyrocopter. He can still play Gyro better than you can, and that's where he also just finished off a Lincoln Sphere. So now, Gunner, he's not even looking for a Blink Dagger, but if he was, that duel is not really going to be a threat for him. I'm just worried if Pakaz is getting a little bit too much space on his own right now.
Yeah, the duel now no longer, well, not no longer, but less of a threat against him. The Reaper Scythe, sort of a similar story, as Z-Freak's going to get caught out up top, and well, Thunder Awaken, they are starting to feel far more confident in their plays here, making those multi-man rotations. Z-Freak may not be the most valuable kill, but it removes the threat of the split push in the top lane, so now your lineup is free to go looking for kills elsewhere on the map without having to worry about maybe looking over your shoulder at that top lane.
Yeah, and not just that, you don't have to worry about a relocate play, because I cannot bring enough attention to it. When the Shadow Shaman's dead, you're going to get ganked by a Necro. It doesn't really work out in the way that I think 4 Zoomers might want it to, but I think that's where Costabila's BKB here, and he's not going for the Ags either. So this is going to be a Gyrocopter that certainly can start to fall very quickly here, but 4 Zoomers need to play at a blistering pace. They need to 5-man, they need to successfully do it, they need to look for kills pretty much every opportunity they can, and if they don't, that's going to be the concern here, because it feels like Pakaz yet again is getting what he wants, while Thunder Awaken are picking and choosing the fights that they actually want to get into. And this smoke might end up whiffing. They love to find a hero by himself on the mid wave. If they go on Moo though, they can't know about this, but there would be a very fast rebuttal here. It's why Gunner, I think, decides to stray a little bit close, because they know he's there with the save. And Thunder Awaken should just back off, and I think after seeing Gunner, they should.
They're not going to take a chance on this one, but you see Pakaz, he's sort of made his way into the area. Still looking to farm, but he's sort of in reinforcement range if this does turn into a fight, because 4 Zoomers may be trying to look for something here themselves, but doesn't look like they're going to go for it just yet. That is a 2-man smoke from Z-Freak and Moo, though, and they're just kind of going in the same direction that the rest of the team went in, so this is a kind of strange smoke play, but it does get them onto the tower. Tier 2 should be taken. Tier 1 is going to be traded out in exchange, presumably, but obviously Tier 1 for Tier 2, a trade that 4 Zoomers are going to be a bit happier with. But now, if you're Thunder Awaken, where do you go? You still have all your abilities. You did not need the EXO for that Tier 1 mid, but there's a push onto the high ground. 18 minutes in, they're going to drop down the Serpent Ward, so even if no heroes contribute, this is going to do a baseline level of damage, and it will force a response.
And I don't know if Sacred is the one that could have drawn that and gotten the smoke, but they're looking for heroes. They want to catch you off guard here. Ooh, Matthew. Oh, that's such a sick dodge out from him.
Oh, God. Has the extended cast range there for the duel, so they'll still lock Matthew down. Matthew not dead yet, but eventually he'll be finished off, and now Pakaz comes in. They'll take down Z. Immediate buyback from the Ember Spirit, though. They're trying to push their way forward. Gustable, though, He is just working that BKB. Gunner, though, not as fortunate. He gets isolated from his teammates. They'll take him down. They'll get Husky here as well with the waveform forward. And now your Gyro doesn't have backup. He's going to get hit up by the Searing Chain. Spear comes in from Dark Mago. They'll secure the kill. Now they're in onto Mook. Can they cancel his TP? No, the Adaptive Strike doesn't quite land in time. So you're at least able to get Moo out of there, but you lose quite a lot in exchange, considering... Well, Matthew dies and buys back, but really that's the only price that they pay. Some damage on the tier 3 maybe, but that is a big fight going Thunder Awaken's way.
That's a huge fight, and I think really everything they'd been building up to, they go for that play knowing that they don't have Glyph on the Thunder Awaken side. They know they're ahead of the exchange, and they also know that they have Glyph coming back up because they traded out their mid-tier 1. Unfortunately, they just aren't able to either get out the first hero that was really gone on there, but more importantly, they don't have enough control. They both pop their BKB so early on with the Gyro in the LC. They don't get to do really any baiting, and then as we typically see with this Death Prophet, well, when the DP runs in, regardless of whether or not you're BKB'd, it's all physical, and it burns. Unless you have a plate mail, unless you have some natural armor, it really hurts, and I think that's where Forest Zoomers kind of get run over. Not to mention, because becomes the Gyrocopter, he goes in, he flat cannons. It isn't the most damage because he only has a Lincoln Sphere, but it's enough. And now he almost has a full Scotty. That is a huge fight to try and turn here. And well, they're going to try to swing into Roche, and this is another forcing move that Forest Zoomers can go for, but I can only imagine Thunder Awaken are going to try this, or at the very least, they're going to try and smoke, but oh no. The smoke didn't pop. They just kind of ruined their play there on the illusion. This is getting a little bit hairy for Forest Zoomers.
Okay. They don't see Gunner. Well, they see him now, as Matthew is going to be able to spot him out. Tries to dodge out the duel. Gunner, though, pops the BKB, but he's going to hold that ult. Holding. Still holding. All down's going to be used. They're going to try to reset. That was a very awkward start to the fight, but over on the other side, Husky, got to be careful. He's got the tether, but now Gunner's going to make his move. They look for the duel. They jump in with the Reaper Scythe as well, but they don't actually kill anyone off initially. Sacred will die after the fact. And honestly, that might just be enough, but Kaz is going to work. Gustabile, he needs his backup. Husky's trying to get to him, but he's not going to be able to make it there. Kaz just burns through two. They get the spear stun now onto Gunner as well. And Kaz grabs the triple. Moog gets away again. And I guess this time you get the Death Prophet instead of Matthew, but it's still going to be 4 dead on your own side. And if you're Thunder Awaken, okay, maybe we take a step back here, boys. That's diving a tier 3, but they take the fight. And that one... Oh, hold on, they're not done. Moog gets hit by the spear. Because, though, HP-wise, I don't know how confident he feels about this one, but he is going to start going in now. Z-Freak will arrive. Not actually able to do a whole lot to help out. The root now comes in from the Searing Chains, and Because cleans it up. So they needed a moment to regroup, get some of that health back on the Morphling, but once Because is ready to go, they dive back in. And BT, you know, you said earlier on it felt like he was getting too much. Now, it feels that way because it is that way. He is massive on this Morphling.
Yeah, and not just that, he's got Pandaboo behind him always. He is always finding those Aphotic Shields. He's keeping the Mist Coil. Pakaz gets to stay on relatively low strength because the heals are coming through constantly, and he's also playing safe. He's playing really well around the Shadow Shaman without Z-Freak finding the initial Hex or, you know, maybe getting a duel onto him. The problem being the fights are so spread out, and he knows on Z-Freak if he gets anywhere in the middle of that fight, he's going to get changed up, he's going to get run over, and he's also going to get silenced out from Sacred. That was a fight they took without Exorcism. That was a complete wash, and well, now that was your forcing play for Zoomers. They maybe had a timing to go immediately back into the pit after they all respawn just because the Morph is still on CD, but that was also barely a good fight for them because the Morph was on CD. But now, almost level 18, not really going to be too concerned about that cooldown. You're going to have it for every team fight. And even more concerning, going to have a full Daedalus. He's just playing a little bit too far ahead of the Gyrocopter at this point. Costabile, it feels like he needs a Scotty. It feels like he needs a Maelstrom. It feels like he needs quite a few more items before he's ever able to stand toe-to-toe to the Morphling. But more importantly, we need to find him really apart from that Abaddon. We need to somehow split up Thunder Awaken if we're 4 Zoomers. Unfortunately, I feel like right now we don't have enough in the tank to really get that threat going, and they're going to smoke into the pit, but you can't even start it. They know it's too slow.
Yeah, now you see the Gyrocopter looking for this Ags. The problem is, you know, I asked about this Ags back after we saw the crit stick, but now delaying it via the purchase of the BKB, the Aghanim Scepter is great damage-wise, but it's also predominantly kind of looked at as a sort of farming item too, and an item that you're now looking for after 2 other purchases. I don't know if they're going to get the full effect as Dark Mago jumped in, missed the spear though, but look at them trying to run Husky away once again, trying to keep him out of the fight as Z-Freak will be taken down. The duel is not really going to be all that effective. Z-Freak and Husky are both dead. Moo's gone as well. Constabule will fall. Gunner dead. Full 5-man wipe. Not a damn kill the other way. For Zoomers, this is just getting ugly.
Yeah, I'll be honest, it wouldn't have been entirely surprising if they just call it after that, because it feels like their timing's gone. It really does feel like now the game is just completely Thunder Awakens. They're playing into the Exo, they're playing versus Dark Mago. He has the Health and Halberd, he stops all damage coming in from Constabule before the fact that the cause, of course, will always become the Gyrocopter. He'll always get in there. Now with an Aegis to boot, you weren't killing Bakaz before, how are you going to kill him now? This game is just starting to feel nearly out of reach for Zoomers already, and after such a good early game too, just what a way to go.
Yeah, I mean, we were sitting here kind of, you know, marveling at how well Gunner had played the mid matchup, how aggressive Moo and Z-Freak were capable of being against that Morphling up top. You know, bottom lane was just sort of going okay, but the draw for the Gyrocopter was supposed to be a win in and of itself, but you know, that momentum has gone, and again, I think the Gyrocopter going for the BKB earlier on is something that at the time may not have been that bad, but in hindsight, it really doesn't set them up as well as they wanted it to, and the kills that they were finding earlier on, the plays, getting in with the duel, getting the Reaper Sight there to follow it up, those just stopped becoming consistent enough options for them, and now they've got to play from behind.
Yeah, and as we usually say when we're talking about Thunder Awaken, I feel like they were itemizing and playing like they'd be winning 5 minutes from now. And I think the best example of that is Gunner just going for this first item BKB and then unfortunately realizing that he doesn't have an initiator. He doesn't have another player to go around the map with and really accelerate him. As soon as those kills stop, then everything stops on the Zoomer side. And I think that really is the beginning of the problem here. And now, well, Thunder Awaken, they're ready to come up the high ground. They've got an ultra high damage carry with a full Daedalus. You have to respect this. There's no split push play they can really go for. If they use the wards back bottom, then suddenly they immediately lose the mid racks. They need them for the fight, but the problem is they didn't really care before. Are they really going to care now? Now with the curse going through, it just dies so quickly.
Even waveforms his way into the homing missile, so he's not going to get stunned up by that. Oh, okay. They've got the duel down now. Can they kill Bakaz off? No, they can't. He is just too strong. Not able to finish him off. Gunner and Z-Freak will both die. They're going to lose Moo on the backline there as well, and now they push in onto Constabule. The Gyrocopter needs help, but there's only so much healing Husky can do. It's not enough, and that's the GG. Thunder Awaken maybe a little pissed off after losing that second game in such a sort of unexpected fashion. They come in here and they just completely dominate their opponents, swinging that momentum their way as they take a 2-1 lead.
Nope. Super clean game, super easy. I don't want to say easy victory from them because they were certainly playing from behind, but unfortunately for Zoomers, there was enough space. There was enough time. Bakaz beautifully picked his fights. I think early on, showing up bottom when he needed to, being the one to really get those trades going in their favor, but also some strange misplays from Zoomers. Again, that bottom tier 1 defense where you lose Gunner and Moo, you don't get the entire combo heading down there, and then you lose a few heroes top. It feels like Zoomers were maybe a little bit too split up for their own good, and I think their lineup is very capable of starting to roll the objectives, starting to push in very early on, but it also feels like if they weren't winning at 15 to 20 minutes, then they weren't going to be able to hold this one through, and that's where I think Thunder Awaken, they turn up the heat, they turn the game around, and really, it all starts and ends with Sacred on this Death Prophet. It is still just way too good of a hero, and I think unfortunately for Zoomers, they go for the IO Gyro. We'll have to see in the next draft if we go for something maybe a little bit more meta in 731 here, but I think in going for that strategy, maybe they paved the way. I honestly think Thunder Awaken aren't really going to care, though. I think this is the throwaway and a victory that they'll surely take.
At this point, the problem is, we talked about Zoomers, as you said, trying to get that pick in there to sort of force a paradigm shift in terms of the bans. The shift may have come, but it may be one where Zoomers suddenly have to look at new heroes to ban out instead of their opponents. So obviously the draft backfires because they lose the game, but now looking ahead to Game 4 and a potential Game 5, they may have given themselves a little bit more to worry about on their own end. So In the draft, we mentioned that we liked they were taking that risk, but ET, if you take that risk, this could potentially happen to you. Now they have to deal with the consequences.
Yeah, and they have the hammer, they have the pick priority, they get to decide now, but you wonder if they're going to have the same draft. And early on, it felt like Zoomers in game two. It felt like they were winning their lanes. Gunnar was really winning his lane, and they were making those easy plays, but then it just all falls apart just because of their core matchup, really. At the end of the day, I think it's those bans. And again, you need to be very specific with these heroes that you pick up because if you want to boil it down to that, sure, Thunder Awaken had a rough early game, had the Death Prophet and the Mars to fall back on, but you ended up in a draft where you had Morphling playing versus Gyrocopter. That's the second game now that I think four Zoomers lose really just because of one pick.
Well, we have said it repeatedly. Against Thunder Awaken, you can't afford to make too many mistakes, both in execution and in draft. For Zoomers, leave a little bit too much on the table there, and Thunder Awaken will punish you for it as they take the 2-1 lead. And now, well, they're one win away from claiming the title of Pro Series 10 champion. And ET, as you and I were sort of alluding to earlier on, this would be the third straight Pro Series victory for this roster, or at least I think 4/5 of this roster. They've gone under different orgs and a different player or two, but the nucleus has remained the same. They have been dangerous the whole way through, and now they're up 2-1. They smell blood in the water. Can they close it out, or can Four Zoomers come up with something to fight their way back into it? Because they definitely need to shift it up now.
No, and now we're done talking. It's just we need to see something from four Zoomers, something more. It has to be in the draft though.
Well, we'll see. Game 4 draft coming up in about 5 minutes here. We'll see what Four Zoomers have left in the tank, or if Thunder Awaken are going to close this one out. So stick around. We'll be back in just a little bit.